Tim O'Malley with Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated and John Brice of FootballScoop.com. And guys, today we had another 5-segment viewing for Notre Dame practice, and on the heels of Charles Jagusah, starting left tackle, being lost for the season to an upper chest injury. Coincidentally, you guys spent a lot of time watching the offensive line in those 5 periods, and we could begin there, I think.
I'm smiling not because Jagusah got hurt. We all feel bad about that, but I don't think I saw anything other than offensive linemen today. And quite frankly, it transpired pretty much the way we anticipated would. And that is, us on the outside look at it and say, oh, you can move this guy here and move this guy here. Or you can insert Tosh Baker at left tackle and keep everything else the same. Other than switching Ty Chan to some backup snaps at right tackle, that was the move to make. And although we on the outside, look at that as, why didn't they try this or try that? Joe Rudolph, we talked to him for about 20 minutes, and his perspective on that is the path of least resistance or the path of least change, and that is to put Tosh Baker at a spot where he worked with the first team all spring. So I think big picture, I think you go into this and Tosh Baker's your starter. You prepare some other guys, namely Anthony Knapp, maybe Absher, although Absher remained at left guard today. But that's the way coaches work, and they want the least amount of change, and that is putting Tosh Baker at left tackle.
And JB, to that point, I think everything is on the table behind Tosh Baker for College Station, because as mentioned by Dela McCullough, it's College Station. You're not putting your freshman in there to pass protect for Riley Leonard. That's coaching malpractice. You're not putting Anthony Knapp or Gerby Lambert or Sullivan Absher in for his first career start in College Station when you have a Tosh Baker that is on the team to start for that reason. But this camp is now about finding the backup and maybe a guy that can challenge him as the season progresses.
Exactly, and let's be clear, in our visit with Joe Rudolph, he emphasized Tosh Baker is the left tackle. He said emphatically, Tosh Baker is the left tackle. He said, look, we all hate it for Charles, but we're also all excited. It speaks a lot to Tosh Baker. Andrew Mintock with a great question about what it says about Tosh Baker, that as a graduate guy, he could have left when they made it very clear he had lost his right tackle spot to Emil Wagner. He didn't stay. He wants to compete. He wants to fight. That's what they're going to roll with moving forward. Anthony Knapp emerging as the number 3 tackle as of right now. He's played both sides. He's getting more and more work at the left tackle position. And then Joe Rudolph saying point blank, there are days that Sullivan Absher does stuff at left guard as well as can be done. Not as well as anybody on the team. He said there are days he does stuff as well as can possibly be done. The consistency is not there, but he likes the interior of that line and made it clear that regardless of whether he's a starter or in the 2 deep, Pat Coogan is a leader. Emphasize that Pat Coogan is a leader of not just the offensive line. He's a leader on the football team, period.
It's interesting theory about Sullivan Absher because, boy, they're the deepest they are is at guard. Obviously, they need help at tackle, but are you doing him a disservice moving him out of there? I don't think. Maybe you are, but if you need a backup left tackle and a backup right tackle. But that's what the next couple weeks of practice are for, is to find out where those guys can play.
Yeah, and Knapp, he makes it clear that Knapp is coming on. He mentioned Gerby Lambert unsolicited. You get the impression, though, that Anthony Knapp is a bit further along right now than Gerby Lambert. They like what they have with Sullivan Absher. He point blank said, everything is on the table. What I do not want to do is risk weakening one position to try and address a problem at another position. You can tell there's growing confidence from the center outright with what they have in Ashton Craig, Billy Schrouth, and Emil Wagner. They want to foster competition at the left guard, and they're going to do everything that they can to help Tosh Baker take the next step at left tackle.
And Tim, this transitions to your question to Coach Rudolph, talking about Emil Wagner, the perceived quicker, more athletic tackle. Does he move to left tackle because that's kind of a traditional way of doing it in the past? And then Pete Sampson followed up with, is there any reason Billy Schrouth would ever get work at right tackle? And that's when Coach Rudolph said, well, we don't want to weaken one position to try to help another. But you could explain, when you asked that question about Wagner versus Baker, right and left side, Rudolph gave you a really detailed answer.
Well, he did. He talked about Wagner just being more efficient and better and more consistent on the right side. And he says, I'm not worried about left or right. I'm looking at what position is the best for each player. And he didn't specifically say Tosh Baker, but in the case of Emil Wagner, he just felt like he's more efficient and consistent on the right side.
Yeah,
so
he said he is better at right tackle than left tackle.
Yeah,
so that's,
yeah, no doubt about it. And as far as moving Billy Schrouth out, I credit to Rudolph, and it's a good question by Pete, because and that's why I asked about Wagner, because people want to know the
answers. For reserve too, I think. It's for Billy Schrouth. Could he be the second right tackle, not the starting right tackle?
But he's their right guard. Yeah. Guard is his position. It always
He's a
has
pro.
been.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Ashton Craig is going to be a pro at center, and Billy Schrouth is going to be a pro at right guard. So you don't disturb it. You don't disturb the chemistry that's going on. No position on football requires more chemistry than to play along the offensive line. So not surprised. We put out a story, came out a little late in the morning, about options they have. The first option was just putting Baker in the lineup and moving from there, and that's exactly what they did.
We also spoke with defensive line coach Al Washington and a handful of players, namely Jordan Botello, because Jordan Botello looks great. According to Al Washington, he's been playing exceptionally well, and I thought Washington elucidated what the growth of Jordan Botello is. He actually addressed the team. And if you've been following Irish Illustrated or other sites, and Jordan Botello as a freshman and sophomore standing up and addressing the team, that would not have happened. That's the mental growth in Botello. And physically, he looks fantastic.
Or if he was addressing the team one of those first 2 years, it might have been to apologize for a play on kickoff coverage, which we enjoyed the hell out of seeing. Another thing to note about Jordan Botello, he sort of voluntarily told us, hey, I lost 20 pounds. I'm so much more mature with my eating habits. I'm so much more mature with my sleeping habits, with my body care. That's made a huge difference. He said, I'm 250, 255. I feel more explosive. He stressed that confidence was a key. Riley Mills talking also feeling much more explosive. Really likes what he's seeing out of the defensive line. And one thing to note is we sort of jump both sides of the ball, and we spent a lot of time talking about the offensive line, is Riley Mills talking about how he wants Billy Schrouth to be able to block him. He wants Billy Schrouth to make him get better every day. He feels like, without a question, those two groups, particularly on the interior, are making each other better every single day. And one other thing about the tackles for Notre Dame that I think is key, you can tell Notre Dame feels really, really good about that center guard spot and what it has there, and not just the first three, but really 4 to 5 guys that they know they can play in that interior. I think because of Riley Leonard's athleticism, they're convinced that they can continue to coach up Emil Wagner and Tosh Baker and be okay there.
I'm really encouraged by Jordan Botello. I felt that way prior to hearing the comments today. To hear Botello talk, to hear the Botello address the team is I mean, that's a major breakthrough. Yes. And it's an off the field thing, but it translates to on the field. Al Washington also talked about the Viper position and said that it's the best that it's been. So that tells you. And I asked about Traore, and he commented about Tua Alamaka. I mean, it sounds like they're really, really happy with the Viper position. We talked to the defensive end on the other side, but I'll let you address that, Tim. But on the interior, he is really high on Armel Mukum. Yeah. I had to call O'Malley over to take a straight-on view of Riley Mills to fully appreciate
he's a
how
monster.
Unbelievably massive that guy is. Great interview, great kid, really started to come into his own last year. But that is just a behemoth, and they feel really good about the depth. Washington praised Jason Onye as well. Of course, they're without Gabe Rubio. Maybe they get him back sometime around mid-season, but things are really looking up along the defensive line.
And they do expect Rubio back sometime around midseason. And this was part of Al Washington's math, I think, because we asked him specifically, how many can you really rotate? He goes, we're going to be rotating 11 or 12. It's a long football season. You can look at the 3 deep at Irish Illustrated and figure this out as well, but he really likes Mukum. He said Mukum, the ex-hockey player, is now near 300 pounds, and it's all good weight. I want to stress, of course, that does not mean Mukum is going in there and taking 30 snaps a game, but that Mukum is going to help them over the course of a long season, as will Donovan Heinisch and Onye. I asked him about Traore. Is he ready to play defensive end? And is R.J. Oben ready to play defensive end, stopping the run, setting the edge, not just being a pass rusher? He's like, yeah, that's the best question, because we recruited R.J. Oben to be a football player, not a pass rusher. He may have considered himself a pass rusher in the past. It's about playing strong side edge, playing the run, holding the edge. And then he said, Josh Burnham has been fantastic in camp. 260-pound Josh Burnham.
For once, we had an assistant coach say all these guys are going to play, and we weren't thinking to ourselves, "Oh, it's just hyperbole." Right.
I tried to skip Burnham to come back to him because I wanted to talk about how tall Brice Young was, and he wouldn't let me. He went right into Burnham. I think he's had a good camp.
And one thing to note, again, that I think Andrew Mintock first picked up on last Thursday, Howard Cross acknowledging today he's had a tender hamstring, and that's limited him a little bit. So nothing that he's concerned about, or they wouldn't have let him visit with us for as long as he did today. But Howard Cross is just sort of nursing along a tender hamstring.
And Tim, you did ask one more to follow up about Boubacar Traore. Is he ready? And Al Washington said, we're ripping off the Band-Aid.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that is great news, because now he is a pure pass rusher. Yeah. And Notre Dame, I guess they've had a few certainly through the years, but a young guy like that who hasn't proven himself, in an opportunity to be a pure pass rusher, I think he's going to be a nice complement to the other guys they have at that position.
We'll be back on campus in a few days. We will also have an Irish Illustrated Insider podcast on Thursday. Until then, for Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, John Brice of FootballScoop.com, thank you for watching Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis.